No, you're right, GB1. We've been building a lot of helicopters here on the show lately, but this one's different. Well, you know, moving parts is different enough. And trust me, I know our friends are gonna like it and you're gonna like it too. I got this. Hey everyone, and welcome to Groove Builders, the show where we create together. I'm your host, Disorderly Cone, and this little astromech over here is GB1. In this episode, we're going to be taking a look at a brand new company to enter the metal model universe. Who are they? Well, they're Metal Time, and these guys are looking to dethrone Time for Machine as the motion metal model kings. Can they do it? How do their kits stack up? Do they actually work, and will it all come together? These are all great questions, Groovers, and we're going to get the answers. Let's get down to the workbench and take a look at the package. Boom! There we have it. All of our pages needed to build the Lifting Spirt. Lots of pages here, but not so many parts. We can definitely see some inspiration from their competition in these instructions. Let's take a closer look. The first thing we're going to talk about is how to assemble the spring and gear assembly. Next, we'll shape our body and add the tail detail on and show you how to line everything up so it works smoothly. And finally, we'll go through the cockpit detail, how to shape it, and put it all together correctly. This may not be as big as some of the other builds we've done like this, but I'm sure it's going to have its challenges. Luckily, we have a tool expert here that can give us some help. Timothy? Hey, yeah, Timothy. What are you doing?
I'm ready for Metal Time!
Oh, no, actually, it's Metal Time is the name of the brand. We're actually building a helicopter today. It's a Lifting Spirt. I was told that you had all the tools ready for us too?
Oh, right. The Metal Time Lifting Spirt is a model that not only requires patience, but also precision. Most of the tools you need come inside the package, like pliers, rasp, and claws. But to make things easier and more uniform, you'll need tweezers, tapping punches, and a Bender 1.0 tool. Now, leave me alone.
Thanks, Timothy. I didn't know dollars could rock out like that. Now, as always, these are just our suggestions, and you really don't need anything but the tools that come in the kit. However, having these extra ones will make it a lot easier for you to put all things together and get them lined up correctly. Now, Groovers, we've looked at our instructions and we have all our tools. There's only one thing left for you to do, and that's to press that like and subscribe button. We're currently trying to get to 4,000 subscribers here on the show and really could use your help. No pressure at all, though. I'll wait. Oh yeah, it's that little red button down there and the little thumbs up thing. Yeah, don't worry, I get lost too. Oh, thank you! I really do appreciate it. We got all kinds of really cool stuff coming on the show, and to have you here on future projects, it's gonna be kind of awesome. All right, Groovers, let's get down to the workbench and build this Lifting Spirt. The Lifting Spirt from Metal Time is a model that is a pleasure to build from start to finish. Like most thicker 3D metal models that move, you'll need to make sure that all of your bends are super precise for the best possible outcome. Something to keep in mind is that all of these builds are designed in a 3D CAD program, and all the parts are made to fit. You can get away with some tolerancy differences, but too many of them will result in the model either not working or not coming together at all. Think of these builds like watchmaking, and you'll be on the right track. Speaking of watchmaking, let's get started with our spring assembly. As you can see, our parts are highlighted in green, and the sheet number is right on the side. I will call this particular assembly the cassette. We need to take our spring and line up in the middle with our spring catch. I like to lay my parts out exactly like the instructions so I know everything is orientated correctly. Once everything is lined up, we can fold the cassette, making sure to get right to the edge before we bend any of our tabs. Doing this on all of our tabs and folding areas will make sure that everything is evenly bent. After getting our tabs bent over and in place, we can move on to our key. These pieces are a little bit funky, double checking the instructions, we can make sure that these 3 parts all line up correctly. Once together, we can use this washer to help stabilize everything. And now we can insert this into our cassette. When placing the key into the cassette, it might help to jiggle things around a little bit to get everything to line up with that spring gear inside. Once our key is through, we can secure it by bending these little eyelets. It's important here not to overbend them. We want a strong connection, but with a little bit of play. Okay, it's drive gear time. This is a pretty important part to get right. Thanks, GB1. I know they know I'm speaking from experience. The important thing to know about all of these parts is they have to be completely flush. Remember that rasp we got in the kit? Well, all of our parts need to be sanded from these little tiny burrs. Burrs are those little bits of metal that are left over on the piece from getting it out of that sheet. I don't do a whole lot of sanding in my videos because that's pretty boring, but believe me, I have sanded the majority of my pieces, if not all of them. Once everything is sanded and looking good, we can bend the tips of these 2 guys. Now it's very important here to make sure that we're bending the right part in the correct way. While these 2 pieces might look the same, they aren't. So make sure you orientate it to that little diagram here, and once you have it, just bend the tip down. This will allow it to catch the gear and allow the whole mechanism to work. Now we can make our pancake and secure our gear in place just like before. Okay, it looks like it's more gear time. Much like our drive gear, these require us to pay attention to the details to make sure that we're putting the right part in the right place, but we also need to make sure these are properly sanded too. We're going to put these guys together in the same way as before. Line up the key, use the gears to help you get everything together. Then secure the parts at the eyelets. We have a whopping 5 of these to do. Rinse and repeat. And once we have all of that done, we can move on to making our top gear assembly. The long X part here is super important to bend correctly. Some of our gears are going to be going inside of this part and they need to line up correctly. If we overbend one particular part of our X, we might run the risk of everything being slanted and our movement not working. Going right over to the spaces for our bends and using our picture as a guide, we can start to bend our part. Now we can check our alignment as we add our different gears in. Try not to jam anything into place and beware not to misshape any of the straight edge pieces. Once lined up, we can secure our eyelets and then turn our mechanism to see if everything is working smoothly. Yeah, look at how good that moves! It looks like before we can add more gears to this though, we're gonna have to form our body. There are lots of good ways to get a nice body shape. A balanced diet, some exercise, and... you're right, GB1. Sorry, wrong video. Our body shape here requires some 90-degree bends and some rounded edges. I found the best way to get a good rounded edge was to use my dapping set and roll it around the edges. This gave me a nice curved finish with no creases. Then I used my Bender 1.0 tool to get some really nice 90-degree bends. This tool is great, not just for metal earth models, but for these bigger guys too. Link is in the description. We just need to round off this back, and now we can add the center details to steady our frame. Looking good! Now let's put our gears in place. Taking note of the different details on our gears, we start to place them in their proper places. Once we've gotten everything where it needs to be, we can check the alignment by this diagram, and then turn the key on the bottom to check to see if everything moves freely. If things aren't moving, try to see what's not lined up, or see if maybe there's one of the tabs that's getting caught on a gear. Sometimes if we don't do enough bending in securing the tabs, or if we over bend the tabs, this can cause the gears to misalign. Once we have everything set, we can add our stop in. Again, this is just a key. It seems like there's a lot of keys in this build, and by the end, we'll be key masters.
Let's move on to our tail gear area. For this, we need to build a shaft. The shafts in these builds are notoriously finicky and loose, causing most of the models that have them not to work correctly. The best way I have found to get these things to work is to be as consistent as possible, and in this case, the tighter and flusher the connections, the better. Let's place these little guys on top and below, and then we can use these rings here to help us secure them in place. We don't need to go crazy on the small bends, but make sure they are strong. Now we can add the end gears and secure them the same way. When installing the shaft, we need to line up the gearbox first, then place the back gear in the rear. You may find at this point that the shaft moves really freely and doesn't line up with the gearbox. You can adjust the placement of both these gears by taking where the eyelets are on the front and back and moving them up and down. However, be careful not to over-warp these. You shouldn't need more than a few adjustments. Over-adjusting this area might cause the whole movement not to work, so again, be really super careful about adjusting these eyelets. After getting that shaft in place, we can now add our other gears. I found this area to be particularly on the loose side, and I had to go over it several times to get everything to fit right. Don't be surprised if that little gear on the drive shaft just makes it to the rest of the tail. Let's do a little check. Alrighty, now we can add this little rotor, and boom! We're ready for our cockpit. These details are a lot more straightforward than what we've been doing for the most part. Our seats are formed by equally bending the metal at all the fold lines. Insert them at their insertion holes and make sure that your tabs are nice and flush. We do the same for the center console and the instrument panel. Where I started to run into difficulty was with the landing gear. It's kind of hard to secure the gear in place with all of this detail in the way, but after looking at it, there really doesn't seem to be a better way of doing this. We can unbend some details if we need to be able to get this securely in place, but just make sure that we don't go too far and accidentally warp any of the parts. Looking good! Now we can add the wheels and fit these doors. Okay, let's move on to the top. This part looks difficult, but with our bender tool and dapping set in hand, we can get the right curves and folds with these. I will roll our nose equally on either side, and then we can do the same for our top. With our bender tool, I can finish up the bends we've already done and make them a little sharper. After getting it properly shaped, we connect these two pieces together, and let's get these smaller details going. Looking really good. And now for some tricky alignment. Yeah, I know it's not straight, GB1, just give me a moment. There we go. Now, let's add our last few bits of details and give this thing a go.
There we have it, the Lifting Spirit from Metal Time. This build was awesome, right from the beginning all the way down to the end. Yes, there's some trickiness in there with all these kinds of builds, especially with these thicker kind of steel builds. When it comes to the moving parts, there's always going to be a little bit of finagling and kind of getting everything lined up just correctly to get all the mechanisms working right. What I found with this particular kit was that Metal Time went out of their way to make sure that all of the engineering inside really worked well, and it was simple enough that you could use it multiple times without it really wearing out. Because there's really not a whole lot of moving parts here, it's pretty easy to determine where something might be caught up. And to be totally honest with you, I found overall nothing really did get caught up. The tail section here can be a little bit finicky at times, and I did find that this little back rotor here tends to sometimes get caught on that little side piece, but outside of that, this model works exactly as advertised. And as someone who's built all different kinds of metal models out there, the ones that move tend to not always follow that description. So to be able to build a kit like this that's more complicated and have all the working pieces actually work, while that shouldn't be a big thing for our industry, it kind of is. So I'm really excited to see what other models Metal Time puts out there into the market, and if they pay as much attention to detail as they did with the Lifting Spirit as they have with their other models. Can I recommend this build for new builders out there? Not really. If you've built 3D metal models before and you're kind of aware about how all these things come together, this build will be pretty straightforward for you for the most part. The moving components are the only real difference between this model and, well, say a Metal Earth model, and of course the thicker metal. Outside of that though, if you've never built one of these models before and you're completely foreign to the whole concept, the thicker metal might be a little bit of a challenge. And not completely understanding that every one of these pieces needs to be exactly bent for it to work correctly is kind of a thing. I think a lot of people that come into our metal model hobby think that, you know, if the piece just makes it, then it's good enough. And in most cases, it is. But unfortunately, when it comes to these premium 3D metal model kits, just good enough won't cut it. Everything needs to be exactly like it says in the instructions. And with Metal Time's instructions not necessarily being the clearest at the moment, I think a lot of new builders will be completely turned off from the hobby if they jumped into one of these guys. So for that, I really do have to recommend this for the more experienced crowd out there, but man, you will be so impressed if you pick this kit up. Groovers, I had a really good time building the Metal Time Lifting Spirt with you, and if you guys had a good time, don't forget to press that like button, as we got all kinds of really cool content coming on in the future, including other builds from Metal Time. Want to support the store and build cool stuff too? Check out groupbuilders.ca. We have all kinds of really awesome models on there at great prices with fast shipping to the United States and Canada, including some really awesome tools for our 3D metal model hobby. Now before I go, there's one thing that we have to do. You see, the difference between a lot of the other metal model companies and Metal Time is that after you've completed your build, you have an awesome little pin here to signify your completion and your master buildery, if you will. So what we need to do is we need to put this on the old lab coat. I think right here is good, because that, my friends, marks an accomplishment of building something awesome. And every time we get a kit that has something like this on it, I do want to add it to my little lab coat here. All right, Groovers, until next time, keep building. No more metal music inside the TARDIS.